Don't make it worse. Rule number one. Steph, how are you?
That's my friend.
Good. Hey.
Good. Everybody all right? You know that?
Yeah, I think so. So
The
far.
weather.
Yeah. Y'all okay?
All things considered, I think everyone's pretty.
Pretty lucky. Oh, Steph.
Just in the month of May, we've taken 2,660 calls off call center.
Well,
Mostly do this. Well, not mostly.
doing good.
Yeah, this I haven't opened it yet. Oh, my thingy. Thank you. You're hangry though. I thought I was the hangry one. I really did.
I'm hungry. My whole family knows that.
Hangry. Well, I am too. I was wanting the food. I get real antsy.
Yeah.
So I thought,
Kind of lose it around 8
maybe
o'clock.
that's why John and I don't even notice. We do.
7:30, 8 o'clock, I'm done. Fired up about this one, honestly.
Doesn't have to be, well, anyway, it'll be good.
Having food across there. Had an open bar, we wouldn't smell it.
We would never meet. We'd never meet.
Hey, I saw you on,
I wonder why, David.
you and your little, Jeep, with your dog.
Yeah, tootling around.
I was in my big truck, hauling, I hauled the load out to the burn pile.
Yes. We drag it there. There, there.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, that's too bad.
She sales tax.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Because the executive time period. I mean, it's not. We take.
Well, no, no, it's not. Of course, it's going to turn on. Okay.
Here's your budget. Easy money. How are you? This is Mr. Holmes. Uh-oh. Oh.
What is this? Bearded polyglot. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, that is nice. Oh.
Look at there. Here's a nice one. Hot dog. I was being facetious.
No.
All right. Good evening. It is 5:32. We're not quite ready to call order, but I do want to make note that Amy Casey is ill tonight, but she will be participating, I think, remotely. So I don't know that we'll have her video, but at least on one agenda item, God is not a female. That sounds like Amy. It's really Amy talking. If she ends up talking to the speakers, well, it doesn't sound like Amy. Maybe God is a female and sounds just like Amy. It's okay. But in this particular case, it is Amy. Sorry to merge church and state there with some theological debate from the bench. So anyway, first we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance to the U.S. flag led by me. Matt Bates will lead us in the Texas pledge, and then Councilmember Dave Covington will give us our invocation. Join with me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Please bow with me. Father, we love you. We thank you for the sunshine today. Lord, we prayed for rain for 2 years and you delivered, and we could have a break for a minute here. But we are thankful for the rain. Father, in light of the storms that have come through over and over again, I've heard neighbors and citizens and friends say it was bad, but it could have been so much worse. And we're thankful for where we are. And so, Father, through all those conversations and as we reflect on everything that's gone on, we give you glory and praise for your protection, your provision. At the same time, we do know that there are friends and neighbors that are hurting and who are facing a challenge that they don't know how to tackle. And so, Father, we just ask that you would be a provider and that you would provide comfort and peace and make a way for people. And we trust you with that. Father, we lift up and we thank you for all of our staff, our public works staff, police and fire and park staff who have worked so hard over the past week. We thank you for them. And we just pray that you give them rest and endurance as they continue, because we know the job's not done. We thank you for the privilege that it is in Belton, and we don't take that for granted. We ask for wisdom tonight as we consider the business of the city. We thank you most of all for your son. It's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, we will call this meeting to order at 5:35 on Tuesday, May 28th. Again, thank you for being here. The first item after order is public comments. I have one that has signed up for public comments. If anyone wishes to address the council on a non-agenda item, this is the time to do it. Whether you signed up or not, you're welcome to do that. The first one I have is Christian, is it Grimmer or Grimer? Grimmer, all right. Yes, sir.
What I'd talk to you about is the leased properties in the city. I live to them, which kind of stinks. And these property management companies do not do their job. They do not care on how properties are cared for or how they impacts the communities. And as I've done some research, these owners predominantly do not even live in Texas. And therefore, they're just like, whatever, this. The neighbor next to me, run by Five Star Property Management, they evicted the individual. But the yard, they've run through locksmithing, they've run through property cleanup, but yet the mailbox is still laying out in the middle of the front yard. The grass is still like almost 2 feet high. And they don't care. This has been a problem with this one property in particular. But it's a trend through my community over there. That all the lease properties are all waiting for, they don't do anything to the property until code enforcement tells them to. So now in turn, they are using city resources to manage their properties, which is a drain on our system. Because these individuals should be elsewhere doing things, not working for property management companies. So that's why I've sent you all an email. And in that email, there's a solution to this. We need to start regulating them. I'm not one on big government. I hate taxation and I hate regulation, but this is getting out of hand because it's not just Belton in particular, it's everywhere. And these property management companies turn a blind eye and they thumb their nose up to city ordinances and to you guys in particular. They're not gonna do anything. Oh, I get a little notice, mow the grass, I'll get around to it, get around to it, get around to it. Code enforcement has to take them to court. To get them to cut their grass. But in the meantime, the citizens are suffering that are next to them. So they need to have all their houses need to be permitted by the city so they can have a database of who these individual places are. And have the COs attached to that said permit. So when they start getting so many substantiated complaints against them, they can have their license or permit pulled from, just like it would be any other business, and be shut down and have their CO pulled and vacated. And have a penalty substantial that they cannot lease these properties for a minimum of 2 years. Or the owner would have to come back and reside in the home. That's what needs to happen because this, I know my development, Sedona Estates, is very new. But this is going on all over the place. And yeah, that's the issues that are going in.
Well, thank you very much. This issue has been raised as we looked at temporary rentals or I guess short-term rentals, about regulation on short-term as well as long-term rentals. We'll refer this to staff and let them look into this. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that's the only one I had on my list. Is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against anything? All right. That being said, we'll go to item 3, which is affirming a local disaster declaration for the weather-related emergency that we just saw last Wednesday night. Mr. Listy.
Mayor, members of the council, as was mentioned in the prayer, Councilmember Covington, obviously we all experienced the storm last Wednesday. As a result, in response to it, the mayor and city manager signed a disaster declaration on the following day. The objective of that is to try to put us in a position to take of any state or federal funding that might become available. The disaster declaration can be executed by the mayor in anticipation of future extension of that by the city council. So that declaration is in effect right now. And what we'd ask the council to do is to extend that declaration at this point in time. And we're looking forward to governor's declaration of an emergency for Bell County. I talked to the county judge today and on high threshold to meet, but we believe Bell County that, and we just want to be in the most opportune position to perhaps recover some of the funds that are necessary to recover from the disaster. So we would recommend affirmation of the disaster declaration signed last week.
All right, recommendation to affirm the declaration that has already been signed.
I move we affirm the declaration of disaster.
Second.
We have a motion, a second, to affirm the declaration. Any other comments? I will say, I'll take a moment to say this comment, a couple of things. One is the next item is going to be a scholarship from Waste Management. Waste Management, I think, contacted staff and said, hey, it's Thursday. We're not going to be running because we won't be able to get through the streets. And when they actually did a survey, they found that the crews had worked in the evening and had cleared the streets. And so Waste Management was able to continue to do their operations because our folks were staying up late. I also will note that I worked through the weekend as a lot of people who lost some limbs. Our city staff worked Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They did get Memorial Day off, but they worked all weekend. So if you see anybody from Public Works or anybody, primarily Public Works and Parks and Rec, those guys really were tearing it up. And so it was awesome to see them out there working. And it's one of those ironic things about hard work and a disaster is morale tends to go up when the task gets harder. And I would not going to say everybody's just out there whistling while they work, but it's really nice to see citizens and city workers working together. So again, thank you, the staff, so much for what they've done.
If I could add one thing real quickly, I know Paul's going to come up and present the scholarships, but Waste Management in addition has donated 2 additional roll-off containers for Saturday's bulk event. That's
great.
going to occur. So we want to again express our appreciation to Paul and to Waste Management for that great team partner
Yeah.
as we try to deal with this disaster.
And another thing is next door is one of those nice trolling sites. You get to see all the public comments. And somebody copied Temple's declaration that they were going to resume brush pickup today. And somebody said, well, Belton's been going at it all weekend. And so anyway, so kudos to Belton. We got some kudos. All right. So we have a motion and a second to affirm this. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, passes unanimously. All right. Next item is a scholarship presentation. Mr. Romer.
So Mayor Lee and council members, it's my pleasure to be joined today by Paul Dagereau, Waste Management, and to present the 2024 Belton Waste Management Scholarship recipients. I'm going to share some of the boring background. Paul will get to the more exciting, and then I'll pick up after that. But our 2024 statistics, we had 4 applicants. Each judge was provided a packet with the applicant material with instructions to rank applicants by merit 1 through 4. The score sheets were tabulated and it was determined 4 $1,000 scholarships would be awarded this year. We'd like to recognize and express appreciation for the judges panel, staff members Amy Casey, Joe Dyer, Chief Larry Berg, Lindsay Weaver, Madison Neal, Juan Guzman, Meredith Bender, and Councilmember Dave Covington. I'll turn some time over to Paul.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. My name is Paul Dagereau. I'm the Public Sector Manager for Waste Management. First of all, just wanted to say that Belton in this area is definitely in our thoughts and prayers at Waste Management. We have a lot of employees that live around this area. Our hauling company is only 5 miles from here, and we had a lot of people affected by it. And as the mayor said, we did get up Thursday morning and come survey the streets, thinking that, hey, we held our guys back for a little while, and could not believe how well those streets were maintained that night. And it must have taken a lot of work. So thank you for making our jobs easier with the hard work of Belton staff, Public Works. I understand Parks and Rec has been doing some workout, a lot of volunteers. I'm on your Facebook page, so I see the big pile of brush piling up, and we're definitely happy to help. This weekend, we have our usual cleanup, which we have 5 roll-offs. We're gonna donate another 3 of them, so to help you guys out a little bit. And if you need more, let us know. We're happy to help. We do feel like we're a home team partner here. I've actually been managing Belton since I started with Waste Management Public since 2012. I've gotten to know a lot of you guys, a lot of staff, and I really feel like it's a great partnership and just really appreciate it. I think it is a special partnership that we have. So thank y'all so much. I'm here tonight for the Waste Management Belton Scholarship. This is our 12th year to be awarding the scholarship. The first year we started with 1,000. Years 2 to 7, we did 2,000. Now we're up to $4,000 a year for the scholarship. Counting this year, we've awarded over $33,000 in that time. So just want to congratulate the recipients this year. Kristen DeMaupon with $1,000. Jazz Vasquez Miranda with $1,000. Kyler Ammons $1,000. And JC Myers with $1,000. Thank you guys for participating in the scholarship. Congratulations. I hope it helps out in your first year of college. And just like I said, appreciate the partnership. I'll turn it back over to Paul.
Thank you.
So we're gonna have an opportunity to for them in just a little bit. We're gonna call them up for a picture, but before we do that, I just want to share some information off of their applications so that you can get to know the fine young individuals a little bit better. Christian Demapon. He played football, basketball, and participated in track and field at Holy Trinity Catholic High School. Played piano at dinners for widows and priests, volunteered at a homeless shelter and veterans home, made blankets and provided food for single mothers shelter. Susan Rockwood, a teacher at Holy Trinity Catholic High School, wrote a letter of support for Christian, highlighting his musical gifts, his humor, sportsmanship, and kindness. She said, "The light of Christ shines in Christian. He's an incredible young man." Wendy Lewis, an interventionist from Clean ISD, said, "I wholeheartedly recommend Christian for the Belton Waste Management Scholarship and believe that he is truly deserving of this honor." Christian plans on attending the University of Mary Hardin Baylor and majoring in. JC Myers. JC was the team captain of varsity volleyball and powerlifting teams at Belton High School, a leader with the Fellowship of Christian Youth Athletes, a volunteer at Community Vacation Bible School, Helping Hands, Special Olympics, and at Chisholm Trail Cleanup Days, and a server at Jeremiah's Italian Ice. Winkler, the head girls track coach at Belton High School, said, "Jay is like no other. She's hardworking, dependable, charismatic, and loyal. She puts her heart into everything she does. I have seen her persevere through challenges that were extremely difficult and uncomfortable. Never once did she complain or quit. She focused on the goal and worked hard to accomplish it." JC plans to attend Hardin Simmons University and major in elementary education. Jez Vasquez Miranda was in the National Honor Society, the varsity choir, top 5% academically, varsity soccer, youth advisory commission, Toys for Tots, Angel Tree, Miller Springs cleanup, and Chisholm Trail Park cleanup. Heather Fuss, a counselor at Belton High School, said of Jez, "I think highly of Jez. Because of her drive and humility and kindness, there is no doubt that she will accomplish much and be successful in every area of her life. I hope you decide to help her in this next chapter of her life because she is certainly deserving of it." Sarah Rangel, a family friend and educator, said, "I wholeheartedly believe that Jez is a deserving candidate for the scholarship. Her motivation, resilience, communication skills, and team-oriented approach set her apart." Jez plans to attend Stony Brook University in New York and is undecided on a major as of yet. Finally, Kyler Emmons. Kyler was a member of Future Farmers of America, National Honor Society, top 6% of her class. Her class, volunteer for her group and works at Bahama Bucks. Brad Hobbs, the ag teacher, said, "Miss Emmons has been an outstanding student to work with. She is a pleasure to be around. She excels in whatever she sets out to do." Alicia Nidositko, a family friend, said, "I'm honored to offer my support and recommendation for Kyler for the scholarship. Kyler is a student whom I believe is highly deserving of this honor." Kyler plans to attend Texas Tech and major in plant and science. If I could have each of the scholarship recipients please stand and we can give them a hand. We're going to call them up and take a photo real quick, and then they'll each have an opportunity to address you. You go to the chat, go to the big chat.
Big smiles. Thank you.
Hello, council. I'd like to extend my gratitude to y'all for allowing me to participate in this opportunity to win this scholarship. This will greatly help me in my future endeavors in college, and I would like to just thank everybody here supporting me.
Congratulations.
I want to say thank you so much for this opportunity. It will be such a blessing next fall as I focus on my education.
Congratulations.
I would just like to say thank you for this scholarship and that it's going to allow me to further my education.
I just wanted to say thank you for this amazing opportunity. Bless all of you, and may this community continue to give the same opportunity to students in the future.
It's always a bittersweet time of year as you guys close one chapter in the book and start the next one. Hopefully you'll write your parents into the next chapter. All right. All right. Any comments? Okay. Again, thank you. And thanks to Waste Management for partnering with us in so many things. So thanks, Paul. The next set of items, items 5 through 8, are on the consent agenda and can be enacted by one motion. If any council member wishes to pull one of those for discussion, we can do it. I will read them out and I will make one comment on our boards and commissions at the end of the 5 through 8. So number 5 is adopting the minutes from the previous meeting, 4th workshop and regular meeting. Item 6, appointing boards and commissions. The Parks Board, we will be reappointing Josh Pearson and Oscar Bersoza. On the Zoning Board of Adjustments, we will be appointing Matt Nagley and Nelson Hutchison. The comment I will make on that one is Oscar Bersoza was out there on Thursday or Friday helping. So here's a Parks Board guy out there helping clear brush. And so he gets paid $0 a year. And he's helping. So anyway, that was amazing. Anyway, next item is authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of understanding between the city of UMHB related to law enforcement cooperation. And item 8 is authorizing the sole source purchase of meter interface units from Core and May. The chair would entertain a motion.
Move to approve items 5 through 8.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve 5 through 8. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, item 9. Hold a public hearing and consider zoning change from single family 2 with conservation revitalization overlay residential single family 2 with conservation revitalization overlay with a specific use permit for an accessory dwelling unit with a kitchen, SF2 with CR overlay with the SUP for ADU with kitchen on approximately 0.43 acres located at 700 West First Avenue, located at the northwest corner of West First and South Sparks Street. Tina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mouthful, sorry about that.
Just had to quiz you, make sure you can say all of that. Just joking. For this property, this lot is over 18,000 square feet. There is currently a 932 square foot detached home on it. The applicant placed a 462 square foot RV, park model RV on the property. This request is to allow that RV to remain as accessory dwelling unit with a kitchen. The applicant has removed the wheel and the tow device and provided proper tie downs to secure that to the lot. The applicant's daughter will reside in the home, or the applicant will use it as a home office. They're a little undecided on that at the moment. So here is the property. It's actually at the southwest corner, so I apologize for that mistake. At West First and South Sparks. Here's a look at the current property. Detached home. See, most of this area is developed with detached single lots, and they're all zoned single family 2 with a CR overlay. For ADU standards, it's consistent with our adopted codes, is limited to 1. The lot size exceeds our 5,000 minimum square footage. And there is 1 story proposed for this. The height of it meets our requirement, setback conforms to our requirement. Additional parking will be provided by the existing parking, which is large enough to accommodate that. Maximum lot coverage is 12%, which is well below our 60% requirement. Building materials are compatible with the existing homes that both have siding and painted a similar size. The similar color. Water and sewer lines will be shared with the main home, and the lot is platted and will not be, the ADU will not be sold separately. Here is a site plan. The proposed RV park, RV park model is right there. 14 feet away from the existing structure, meets our 14-foot side yard setback and exceeds more than 50 feet from the other corner. Here is a look at the home. This is the floor plan that shows it's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, kitchen and living room structure. Here is a look at the site with the RV park model at the site. The flume identified this area as generally residential. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this item at their meeting on May 21st and recommended with a vote of 6-1 in favor of approval. Staff concurs with this recommendation. The applicant, Ms. Lopez, is here. Should you have any questions for her as well? I'll be happy to answer your questions.
Do you know the minimum lot size requirement to have an ADU? I know this exceeds the minimum, but I didn't know what ours was.
5,000. That's perfect. Single family 3 requirements.
I guess my other question, any kind of a skirting requirement for that? The pictures I saw, I think still have wheels and frame attached.
Has been removed. There is not a skirting requirement.
And it is going to be used by the owner, or I thought you said you mentioned home office.
The owner's daughter will either reside in it or she will use it as a home office for her business. She works mostly from her location.
Any other comments or questions?
We do a public hearing.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're jumping into, yeah. So we'll stop the deliberations. We'll open to the floor for public hearing on this item. If anyone wishes to speak in favor or against this item, now's the time to do so. Yes, please do. Just name and address for the record.
West First Avenue, Belton. As she mentioned, the hitch and the tires have been removed, and I have already purchased skirting material to skirt it because I want it skirted. My daughter will be residing in it, but not just yet. So I'm deciding to use it as a home office. I work for the VA and I work 50% of the time from home. So I'll use it as an office until she decides to move in. Any other questions?
No, thank you.
No?
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else wish to speak in favor or against this item? All right. Now we will close the floor and reopen the deliberations on item 9. Thank you, Dave. And Chair would entertain a motion.
I've got a concern about putting a mobile home in an area that's not zoned for mobile homes. What does our zoning ordinance look like for mobile homes?
Actually, CR overlay allows for mobile homes to be placed in that district. So this is within that CR overlay.
And then on the tie down requirements, I know that there's different versions of what it means to be tied down to become real property. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I actually sent out an email to Belcat because I know there was some questions about how that is taxed. The applicant has indicated she's previously had this in Temple and she does pay real property taxes on this. So I'm not sure the correct answer. I reached out to Belcat and I received a response to that question.
If I could ask you, what is your plan for tying it down to permanently attach it?
It is tied down to sustain 130 mile per hour winds. It's tied down on the 4 corners.
Okay, like to blocks or to the
To the ground, yeah, they use those big screws and tie it down.
Ms. Lopez, I really appreciate the appearance of your home and it looks nice. But I do worry that we set a precedent that somebody else move in a trailer that's not quite as attractive or not as beneficial to the neighborhood. I mean, it's hard to say no, yours looks nice, but I could see somebody else backing something in, kind of down, hooking it up, and we've approved an ADU that this meets, and I'm just a little concerned about that.
And this is classified as an RV, is that what you said?
Park model RV, yes, sir.
Back to the picture,
Yes, ma'am.
please. Thank you.
Of it on the lot, this one or
The
the
other
previous one?
I think the other one. And more, yeah. I mean, that's unlike any RV I've ever seen. I mean, it looks like a home.
This is a tiny home.
It looks
Yeah.
like-
Yeah, it's my, that would kind of be my, to John's
It
point,
needs to be.
the moving forward, cutting down the helical piles or if they did concrete piers, either way is sufficient, but it being classified as an RV to me is the scariest part, because when you read the packet, and if you don't look at the pictures, you're like, in my mind, it was, oh, RV, no. But then you look at the pictures, it's not an RV. I have an RV. Wish a tornado would have taken it. But yeah, yeah. To me, this is a manufactured mobile home. It's got the nicer siding, the nicer roof. It's not fiberglass. It's not the composite material. But how do you delineate that moving forward, since this is classified as an RV? I mean, what stops this from being an RV park per se versus just a tiny home as an ADU?
And that's how I was looking at it. It looks like a tiny home. The number is just restricted to one as opposed to an RV park where there's multiple. There isn't any pedestals that would be installed for additional ones. That was my thought process in this.
Oh, very good. Just from an administrative point, I mean, if one were to come to me with an RV like I had, I would vote no, even if it was my own RV. Just the fiberglass or composite material, to me, this is different. I don't know if there's a way to administratively clarify that moving forward. As long as they're all SUPs, whoever the 7 of us are up here at the time get on it, but that's just my.
We gotta be careful saying this one's cute and that's ugly though.
Yeah.
No, I know.
Yeah.
That's a concern.
Yeah, I have similar concerns. I think one of them is it's more of a temporary surface instead of a permanent. If it was a poured slab and it had normal building materials as this one does, I think we could delineate it in the code to say that this is ADU compliant RV versus just RV. And so we may need to sharpen our pencil on trying to define time, because there's a lot more of these tiny homes that are built out of regular construction grade materials, not drive down the road materials. And so I don't know, because cost of housing going up again, like's been said, it's a very cute house with this kind of adds to it. And but like Dave said, it's got to be, your baby's cute, your baby's ugly. We can't get into that. So
I don't even know if the slab was sets it apart. I mean, pier and beam is still a functional, allowable foundation, correct?
Correct.
Essentially what this would be. I mean, it's not pier and beam, it's pier and frame, but.
Yeah. Would this be allowed as an ADU under our current policy?
And the CR overlay.
It is with the zoning approval as an ADU, and again, with the CR overlay for area.
So it does restrict, so this, from that perspective, this is restricted to CR overlays. We wouldn't see that in other areas that would not be CR.
Correct.
Can we note that we'd like to maybe just tighten up that for future, just so that we can in a positive manner avoid what we're trying to avoid but also allow for things that meet needs that we're the housing as housing and things like that, the tiny homes, to address some of the newer trends I think we'll start to see more of. But also address some concerns that
We can
could
certainly
come
look at
with
some,
that.
look at some code language to try to clarify what you're talking about. You know, this area is a single family residential neighborhood, basically. It allows site built mobile homes,
Mhm.
and in this case, an ADU. But big lot too also makes it possible where a 50-foot lot, you probably could not do something like this, even in the CR overlay location. So, but I think y'all made some good comments about what we might need to do to try to clarify the opportunities for this going forward.
And also maybe increase our communication with the public of what actually requires approval or a permit. And what that process is. So we don't get started and then have to approve something that's already done.
With that, I would love to approve agenda item number 9 as presented.
I'll second. We have a motion and a second to approve item 9, zone change. Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Aye. All right, motion passes 6-1. Item 10, hold a public hearing and consider a zoning change from commercial highway to single family 1 on approximately 2296. I like how we do approximately and then we give it all the way to 6 decimal places. Located at 500 East Avenue K, located at the southeast corner of South Beale Street and East Avenue K.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I believe the applicants might be joining us on Zoom, Chris? Okay, all right. Apparently they weren't able to make it. For this, permit was issued in 2011 to allow for a single-family detached home to be constructed in a commercial highway district. Normally, that's not an acceptable practice. Non-conforming use code says it's not allowed in the commercial highway district in case of a fire or a national disaster like we're seeing, destroy more than 60% of the reasonable value of the home. It cannot be reconstructed in that commercial highway district. The owner has moved to Houston and they intend to sell the home and requested the zoning change to allow for the existing use, avoid confusion with loan underwriters that will not finance a non-conforming use. Previously, this was zoned single family 2, but in 2002, there was a major rezoning effort to get properties that were adjacent to the highway to commercial highway. And this was one of those properties that was changed during that time. Here's a look at the surrounding uses, actually zonings. This is mostly commercial highway. Across the street, there's some family 3. Here's an aerial. You can see these that are all developed as detached single family homes. The flume shows this again as a commercial corridor, hence why the zoning change that occurred back in 2002. The Planning and Zoning Commission heard this at their meeting on the 21st, and they unanimously recommended approval of this. Staff concurs with that, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Tina?
Okay.
All right. So we will pause our deliberations and open the public hearing on this item. Anyone who wishes to speak in favor or against this item that may do so. And I assume those who are online, if you wish to say something. I guess. Chris.
Hi, sorry. I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know if I did it
Hear you.
right to unmute.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Amanda Escamilla, and I am the family representative in Houston. And so last week we were graciously excited to know that this was, approved by you guys thus far, because as we have stated, we moved my in-laws here to Houston, and they are needing for us to care for them closely rather than at a distance. So that's the reason why we are, pushing this approval through to help care for them, basically. As my father-in-law has dementia, and so it's just getting worse daily, and we need to care for him closer rather than farther.
Thank you. Anyone else speak in favor or against this item? All right, there being no others, we will close the public hearing and reconvene deliberations on item 10 for the zoning change.
Tina, I saw that it was previously single family 2, and now we're going to single family 1. I assume it meets all the lot size requirements.
Yes, sir, it does. It is over 10,000 square feet.
I move we approve agenda item number 10 is presented.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve agenda item 10. Any other comments, questions? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much for joining us online. All right, item 11 is hold a public hearing and consider annexing 2.439 acres located in John Beal Survey Abstract number 70, located at 3076 Simmons Road. Stina.
Hey, thank you, Chris. I'm sorry, there's another slide. Some of you may remember this. This all initiated back in February when we had to renew a couple of non-annexation agreements. This one property is owned by Mr. John Martin Rivetto. It was left out of the last annexation. It also did not qualify for renewal because it did not meet the cultural wildlife management or timber exemption. So therefore, this is considered a voluntary annexation. The applicant was notified in a letter a couple times about the proceedings. Have not heard back from him, but he is aware. We did not get return mails. So their property that was left out from the initial zoning, annexation, it will be zoned as agricultural property. The other two properties that came in are this one, oops, sorry, forgot the highlighter, is the one south, the two south of this lot, and also a commercial property right off of Simmons Road. With this is a resolution, well, actually a previous call for public hearing was done back in February when we did the non-annexation renewals, and a notice will be provided to service providers if the city council passes public hearing. I will be sent out to let everyone know that this is in the city of Belton owner. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have, but at this point, we're at a public hearing to this annexation. Thank you.
All right, so since this has been already conducted before, we'll go ahead and close the deliberations and open for a public hearing on the annexation of the 2.439 acres on Simmons Road. Anyone wish to speak in favor or against this item? There being no comments from the public, we will close the floor and reopen so we can take on this item. Chair would entertain a motion.
I move we approve agenda item number 11 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance annexing the acreage on Simmons Road. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. The chair would like to recommend we table item 12 to act on it after item 15, mainly because Amy's not here. We can go ahead and do the other items, which seem to be a little quicker, get those out of the way. And so if Amy needs to be her being sick, so is that okay?
Do we have to vote? We have to vote.
Well, I just, if we're by acclamation, nobody is opposed to that. Okay. What we'll do is we're just gonna bump these ahead in line. Item 13 is hold a hearing and consider approval of an ordinance on second and final reading, granting a commercial solid waste contract franchise to BVR Waste and Recycling. Miss Amy, I think, is online remotely.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I received a request from BVR Waste and Recycling for a commercial solid waste franchise in the city of Belton. There are two areas of focus at this time, are portable toilets and a roll-off dumpster service. Just to remind you, commercial rates are market-driven. And it does require 2 readings and a public hearing by charter. At your last meeting, we had the first reading of the ordinance. This meeting will need to have a public hearing followed by adoption of the ordinance. This franchise will co-terminate on January 26th of 2030 with all the other commercial solid waste franchises that have been issued by the city. This is the 8th commercial franchise. We have another request pending, but we do recommend that you hold the public hearing and approve the franchise ordinance on second and final reading.
Thank you, Amy. I hope you get better. We will, based on this recommendation, we will close deliberations and open a public hearing for consideration of adding BVR waste and recycling to our commercial solid waste collection franchise. Anyone wishes to speak in favor or against this item? Now that we've held the public hearing, we will close the public hearing and we will reconvene so we can adopt the ordinance on second and final reading. Chair, whether
I move we approve item 13 as presented.
a motion
Second.
and a second to approve item 13. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It passes unanimously. Item 14 is hold a public hearing and consider an ordinance amending Chapter 6, Fire Protection and Prevention, Section 6 to 17 of the Code of Ordinances and Section 304 Administrative Plat Approvals of the subdivision ordinance related to fire protection exemptions. Chief Fontenot, I think, is going to start and then hand off to.
Actually, reverse.
Oh,
I'll
reverse,
start and
okay.
hand off.
All right, first Tina.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm just here to give you a little bit backstory of how this came to be. A couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, there were a couple of single-family developments that came through the subdivision just because we did not have an in-city exemption for fire protection. The process was a little longer because they had to go through the planning and zoning and city council for approval. During that time, it was decided that maybe we needed to consider an option for a staff review for administrative plats that qualify for certain allowments based on the location, whether or not it was in a city adjacent CCN district that cannot provide fire protection, and also the distance away from city utilities that are established. So staff worked with planning director Bob Van Til and Chief Fontenot worked up some cases where an exemption would be allowed. So this is our initial steps, and we're bringing it back to you guys for consideration.
So currently the fire code 507.1 requires that any structure built within the city limits would need fire water hydrant within 100 feet of a residential structure. And when we're looking at the maps of our limits, there are some areas that don't have water service within 500 feet, a water main within 500 feet. And we have been approached at times over the past couple of years wanting exemptions on that. And so Bob and I put our brains together and tried to come up with a solution where the undeveloped portions of the city that doesn't have water there yet could still have a heritage home type built on family property. So we came up with an exemption to 507.1. And basically what that says is that residence developments located in the city and inside or outside the city CCN were associated to access to, I'm sorry, I hurt my back and I'm kind of in pain, so it's hard for me to focus. So I apologize. Where access to adequate water supply for fire protection is more than 500 linear feet away from the nearest line, fire protection water supplies may be exempted under certain conditions. And first of all, it needs to comply with the subdivision ordinance, which Tina will talk about in a minute. And then we talked about some minimum separation distances between the structures to be built on those property. Where if they're 500 square feet or greater, then we want at least 100-foot separation. And that is important when it comes to fighting fire because fire grows very quickly, and without a water supply there, basically what we're saying is that we will do everything we can to save that home, but we don't want it to become multi-buildings if we can't get there in time and we don't have the adequate water supply. So we ask for that separation. If it's less than 500 square feet in size, then we could have 50-foot separation. Any and on the property lines, we need that separation. No building should be built within 50 feet of that property line. And that actually came out of our governance subcommittee. Wanted us to add that in. And then we need to have a fire access road to 150 feet within that structure or any structure. And the reason that 150 foot is important is because the pre-connect fire hoses that are on the fire trucks are 200 foot. So that gives us 50 foot to get inside that house and work if needed. So we want that access to be at least 150 foot from that building. What the exemption does not include exemptions to would be any industrial, institutional, or commercial property. It does not apply to multifamily dwellings or townhomes. And a plat cannot have more than 4 lots on it. So we're not talking about a big development being able to develop this way. It would be more like a family development where maybe they want to subdivide their property to allow a family member to build on a large lot. All right, and I believe that goes over to Tina.
For the subdivision amendment, what we're proposing is to allow for this to be a part of administrative plat review. So with that, it would allow for an exemption from staff or action if the property is zoned in agricultural, residential estate, single family 1, 2, 3, or 2-family development if it meets the requirements. There's no more than 4 lots per plat. Again, that's the requirement of admin approval. The lot size is a minimum of 1 acre. Development is greater than 50 feet away from water line and or located in an exempt area that is indicated in the fire exemption map, which we will show you in a bit. And like Chief said, from the government subcommittee, they recommended a 50-foot side yard setback for the structure so that one property owner does not take advantage of that 50 foot even for the applicants, and that the applicant adheres to the provision that the chief just talked about that will be adopted as part of Chapter 6 of the City Code of Ordinances. There is a exemption requirement if someone wants to test this. There's still that process of going through a variance request where it would be to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the city. In case if the lot size does not meet that 1 acre and they still want to apply for that, they can still have that opportunity to ask for a variance.
And we all know Mr. Van Til, how thorough he is in his flow charts. So there's how we come to the determination of whether or not they fit that exemption. And this is the map we discussed. What you see, what looks like streets there are actually the water lines. And what we did is we drew a 50-foot radius around that water line, or 500-foot radius around that water line. And the places that you see in hash marks would be considered eligible for this exemption to the fire code and to the changes in the subdivision ordinance. These are meant to be fluid. So as we add water lines, we would be dropping places off of this hash mark that would be eligible. This isn't meant to be a permanent eligibility. Again, once we add those water lines in, we would take that area out of this exempted area. The governance committee recommended some changes, and we made those, mainly that 50 foot from a property line, a 50-foot setback. P&Z commission voted and approved the changes to the subdivision ordinance, and we would like for you guys to consider. We recommend considering or recommending approval for this consideration. Any questions?
I do have a question.
All right.
All this is great. Love the simplicity of the process. I think it's going to help you guys administratively. My question being, the only example that's coming to mind is that Mystic River Phase 2 that's now 5 flag lots, because you subdivision ordinances by having 5 or less that are over a certain size. how, you're still not exempt from fire protection under that, correct? Is that the difference between that and this?
And also there's available water line in that district, so
Okay.
it would not
I
be
just wanted to,
exempt.
I wasn't sure, I didn't want to like throw all this language into something if you could get around it another way, and then it was kind of a moot point.
Bob and I and Jeff and Tina, we all sat down and kind of played devil's advocate and tried to come up with ways to skirt the system.
Yeah.
In its current language, we feel pretty confident in it.
I just didn't want to have to put something else on the books that you'd have to read through to, or evaluate if there was already something that says you don't have to do any stuff, kind of like that one development did, so just so we're.
Yeah, no more flag lots.
With private roads.
With private roads.
No sidewalk there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All right, we'll go ahead and close the council deliberations and open the floor for public comments for a public hearing on this item. If anyone wishes to speak in favor or against the subdivision or ordinance changes, now's the time to do it. There being no comments, we will close the floor and we will reconvene the council to consider this motion.
I've got a couple of questions.
Sure.
One, the 50-foot side yard setbacks, I remember that was a discussion in governance subcommittee. I think that's good. Should we also add 50-foot front and rear yard setbacks? Like if you've got properties that back up to each other that are each facing different roads, where you could have structures that are.
I think it says from any property line is how it reads. So that would be front, back, and sides.
Does say side in here.
Does it?
The zoning district would govern the front, like if it's ag or if it's single family one, those setbacks would govern particularly on the front, and perhaps would not be quite as extreme as a 50-foot. SF1 and address that 25.
I mean, I know some of those are less than 50 feet.
I think most of them, the front setback is 25 for residential. Ag, the largest is the side is usually 20-foot setback, but we're hoping, well, thinking the front setback is usually from a roadway. So there's usually a 50-foot right-of-way separation between that front setback and the house itself from the property line. Rear setback would be something to probably think about, because that's usually a 20-foot setback for those. Again, the hope is that they meet that 100-foot separation requirement, but might be an amendment to consider.
I don't think it,
Unless it would just say 50-foot setback. All directions.
I think the building separations still apply.
You're gonna have a road in front, so.
The building separations would still apply, whether that's across the property line or not. What we try to do with that property line, I think the intent was to, if one of the property owners built a building right on their property line, it would force that other property owner to go at least 100 foot away. So we try to kind of come up with a fair way to do that.
Yes, maybe.
I think having a rear, 50-foot rear setback as well. And then, talking about the difference between structures based on square footage and stuff, I think this came question in governance subcommittee. I don't remember where we landed on it, but if I want to build a house and then put a greenhouse or a chicken coop or a little Morgan building or something that is not a high value structure, could that be less than 100 feet from my property? Are we distinguishing that those are dwelling units that have to be more than 100 feet? Or is there no differentiation on that? You don't remember?
I believe it just says structure.
Okay.
And it also is based on the square footage. So you have greater than 500 and you have less than 100. So if the garden house was under 500, most of them are, that could be a little closer than that 100-foot separation.
I got a 2,000 square foot house and then a 100 square foot chicken coop. It's gonna have to be
50 foot chickens.
50 feet.
You'll get your steps in.
That's if they want to go through this sort of process. the way I understand it. If they choose to bypass what being discussed tonight and go the old fashioned way, would ultimately come.
Correct. This is for administrative plat review exemption. If there was any kind of variances, they would have to go through.
Just if they're gonna not bypass, but just shortcut so that they don't have to go through planning, zoning, or city council. It's just in order to get an administrative plat approval, they need to meet the requirements that's being presented tonight. That doesn't mean y'all can change them, but that's all we're dealing with here.
You're just defining the easy button,
Right.
Yes.
which is a little higher hurdle than, which is not a bad thing.
I think it's great. I think adding a 50-foot rear yard setback makes sense, but I think it's good work. Y'all put a lot of work into it. I think it's gonna be good.
I agree.
Props to the first committee change coming through.
Yeah, it's good, right? Get the folks active.
It's us.
All right.
Chair would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the item as presented with the addition of requiring a 50-foot rear yard setback.
Second. A motion and a second to adopt the ordinance as presented with the amended 50-yard setback.
50-foot.
50-foot, saying 50-foot setback. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. Next item is consider awarding of a bid and authorizing the city manager to execute the construction contract for the annual street maintenance project and any change orders associated with the contract not to exceed the amount authorized under state law. Yeah, already.
Brett,
Turn.
yeah, here we go. Mayor, council, thanks for letting me be able to present this to you. I'm happy to present it. As you know, we've been able to put a lot of money, $1 million extra here that's been added to the budget and has let us be able to move along great with the streets that we need to. This is just giving you an overlay map of what we're looking at doing, which is kind of all throughout the city. It's not just here or there, but it's streets that are viable, that are really needed throughout the city. There's a total of 43 streets. On our base bid, we have 37 that are included on the base bid. And this is highlighting that area of where just the base is, not any adults. One of the streets that we're including, I'm just going to give you a few of them just so you can kind of get a feel for what we're looking at. This is East 11th at Bill and Lee. This is Bill Street, basically going from 24th all the way to Estate Drive, which is a really needed street that needs to be done for sure. We also have Downing Street, which is Hayesville. Julianne Street, off 26th Avenue.
It's been a while, months here.
River Place Drive, a section of River Place Drive that kind of has some issues in between Red River Road and Pecos Trail is another needed area. Mary Jane Street from Highway 190 to Avenue East Avenue E, West Avenue E. This one's in really bad shape, has had a lot going on. So this is well needed and looking forward to that one. South Wall is another. We already had a lot done this past year. These are some added sections on the south section side and another section that's north of Holland Road that we're trying to get into this one. We also have adults, which includes 6 streets along with a parking space area and a parking lot area. And I'll kind of go through those a little bit with you. Adults is 28th Avenue that we've included in there. The parking space area, wanted to just highlight, generally we don't try to go into this realm of things, but in this situation here, it's a well-needed area for parking. And the area, if I can get this thing to work here, the area is basically here and here that we're looking at, that we're hoping to have done.
So,
yes, sir.
So question. So when you do those some pretty, I'll call it opportunities to high center or to scrape your car. Are they redoing that?
They're going to float a little better.
Okay, that's good.
Yes, sir.
Because
Yes.
if you don't have a 4-wheel drive.
Yeah, you would see, bottom out
front
for
bumper.
sure, for sure. Another area that we're looking at is Chisholm Trail Park, which is including a parking section If this thing will work here again. Right here, well, excuse me.
It's more than 15 spots though, right?
This is approximately 45.
Okay.
So it's an added addition. This is something that's, not just coming through the streets funds. This has some allocated funds through parks. And that will be handling a lot of this. Section B, the trail that you see coming along through here that has been needed for some time now. So it's going to be a great addition. And being that it's being funded through this, it helps with cost to help us get a better end of a result from it. The asphalt pricing back in, I know Matt had provided this one time before, we were at $9.65 a square yard for the base bid. Last year we were at $17.45. This year, $15.50, which I think is a phenomenal. So that's looking good, helping us with where we are now. We had 2 bids received on May 21st on our bid opening. One of them was Bennett Paving out of Leander. The others was Brothers RDC. These are 2 companies the city has not actively worked with. So we worked with Bennett, did a little interview, and they had great references from Cedar Park, from Round Rock, from Leander. And I mean, they were all positive and phenomenal interviews. References. There are a total of 8 plan holders, and out of that was 5 contractors. The other 3 were plan holders. Once again, interviewed Bennett Paving and looking forward to moving along with them. We gave them a project deadline of October 1st here. They have already stated that they'll be done probably by the end of summer. We didn't kind of stress to them school as a factor and everything being out. So looking forward to that. If you do have any moving along here, we do have Billy Bennett over here with Bennett Paving. But we are ready that the council award the bid for this contract for the street maintenance plan for 2024.
And do we need to name Bennett Paving as part of the motion? I assume that would be good to do. Okay. All right, any comments, questions, or a motion?
I will mention that I drove down 14th, kind of over by Marion Baylor with the blues called Ribbon Curve. How nice and what a difference that makes. And yes, now that we're at $1 million in our street maintenance program, I think the upcoming budget numbers are $1.030 million, $1.034 something like that. I would encourage us to maybe consider at least a 3 to 5% increase in that annually, just to make sure that we're keeping up with those materials and don't get delinquent or fall behind. I fought the $1 million and wanted to use from elsewhere, but now that we're there, I sure think increasing that by I really feel like 5% annually would give us a little more street repair and better services for our citizens to drive on.
Yeah, that college 13th, 14th area was no longer the worst area in Belton.
It's amazing what happens when you do it that way.
Well, Chair would
I'll make
entertain
a
a motion.
motion. We approve the street maintenance program and recommend the expenditure.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to award a contract to Bennett Paving and authorize the city manager to execute the contract and any change orders. Any other comments or questions? All right, all in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Passes unanimously.
Okay, we're
All right.
done, right?
Yeah, done. Now the item we will pull from the table, previously tabled item is conduct a work session on fiscal year 2025 budget, including but not limited to the general fund and the debt service fund.
Did you make that 5% adjustment already?
I've got it in there already.
Mr. Roger.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. It's budget season again. So here we are getting started.
This is not budget.
Feel like we.
Yeah, really, exactly. What I want you to know is it's this very presentation that got Bob Van Til back in the office. He so anxiously wanted to get it that he managed even on a cane to get to work today. So you can't just get ready. It's going to be exciting. Okay, we're going to talk about the general fund and the debt service fund tonight. Before I get too fired up about fiscal 25. I kind of want to tell you where I think we're going to land in 24. Okay, so let's see here. So we started or ended 2023 with this $8,695,000 in fund balance. For fiscal 24, we budgeted 23,267,000 and expenditures of 23,552,000. We actually planned on drawing down reserves by $284,000. Where it looks like we're going to land is revenues are pretty much in line with budget, a little bit, $100,000 or so more. Expenditures are about 600,000 less than what we budgeted. So instead of using reserves, we're going to actually increase reserves by about this $400,000. That takes us to $9.1 million in unassigned fund balance. That's about 38% of our budget expenditures for
Say again, percentage, please.
30%.
Thank you.
Keep that in mind as we go forward. So why is that? Again, revenues are pretty much in line. Expenditures are under budget, primarily due to salary savings. So you'll recall we received a COPS grant in 2024. So we needed to hire a bunch of police officers. The department also had some vacancies. And so we, as it took much to fill those positions than we anticipated, we budgeted a whole year. So there's some savings there, and also in streets. Services, you'll remember one example in services that we have some savings. We budgeted $50,000 for kind of a third-party building inspections, and we're no longer using that service. So that's $50,000 in savings there for fiscal 24. So now let's go into fiscal 25. Big picture. The big picture is budgeted revenues right now increased by 4.3% with a flat tax rate, which you'll see in a bit. Expenditures increased by 656,000 or 2.7%. Most of that increase is personnel. Also see. Yeah.
Question on the flat tax, you're saying that we would maintain the same rate and
yes.
Okay, and so not maintain the same property tax revenue.
Not the same revenue, correct.
Okay.
Correct, same rate.
Yeah. And are you seeing an increase, are they communicating an increase in appraised values? Or?
Yes, we'll get to that shortly.
Okay, thank you.
I want to point that out because
okay.
that's worthy of that's a big part of our increase.
Yep.
So if we end 24, where I mentioned before, we would end 24 with 9.1 million. In the fiscal 25 budget, I've got revenues of 24,277,000 and expenditures of 24,208,000. Essentially, a flat budget. I mean, flat budget, but revenues equal expenditures essentially at 68,000 difference there. Would take our net, our fund balance to 9,170,000, down to 37.8%, only because the expenditure reserve requirement is increasing. So 38% of our revenue in the general fund comes from property taxes. Sales taxes is 27%. 15% of our revenue comes from charges for service. When we get into numbers, it looks so. Here's our general fund revenues by category. Our budget 23,267,000 in 24. That increases by $1 million to 24,277,090 in fiscal 25. So of that $1 million, you can see most of that comes from those categories there. So property tax revenue would increase $608,000, just my estimate for right now. We don't have certified numbers yet. Sales tax, I'm budgeting a 3% increase there. Franchise taxes would grow by $117,000. The way I come up with that number is, real exciting. It's just averages of the last 2 years. And so we've been growing over 24 to 25 would grow a little bit, 117,000. So let's talk a little bit about property taxes now. So we have received from Belcad what they call the certified estimate. Now, that's not certified values. That's a certified estimate. In April, the law now requires them to provide that to us by April 30th. And what that certified estimate of values is where they think we're going to land. All the protests have been done, and by the time they certify, this is the number that they think they might be at. So the number is $2,354,000,000 is where they expect our property values to be once certified. That's $166 million increase, 7.6% over tax year 2023.
Did they give us a number on what's new versus what?
Yes, they did. I'll give you that right there. So of that 166 million, I wish I had answers like that to every one of your questions. That'd be so wonderful. So of that $166 million in value, the TERS grew by about 58 million. Non-TERS properties, 6% or 107 million. The breakdown between new and existing is pretty even. 86 million comes from existing properties, and around $80 million of new properties were added to the roll for tax year 2024. So I take all of those numbers, I put it into my little tax worksheet. We could be, and these are just preliminary numbers, it's not going to be exactly this, especially out to the fourth digit. But we could see, these could be our rates. Our no new revenue rate could be 5309. Our voter approval rate would be a 5456, and our de minimis tax rate would be 5550. In this case, because de minimis is actually over voter approval, it would be that de minimis rate would be what, if we went over that, we'd have to have a mandatory election. What I'm building this proposed budget on is a tax rate of 5326, which is the same rate that we have now. So when you see property tax revenues increasing, it's because of that new value, not just new value, that's additional value, the value increases, if you will.
And Mike, the combined property tax increase from just regular property and then TERS combined would be about 10%, correct?
It was 7.6
combined. Okay.
So here's don't miss it, Bob. So here's just a property tax history where you can see kind of our O&M has grown from 5 million to 9 million over this 7-year time frame. TERS values have increased from 800,000 to 2.3 million, and our debt is generally flat around 1.2 million for the last several. That's total levy and how that has increased over time. If you put that in a graph, it looks like this. So what you have, like in this example here on the 2017, in the bars, vertical bars, you have the breakdown of the rate. So $7 million was the tax levy in 2017. And the red that you see there is the O&M component. The gold is the TERS component of that levy. And the orange is the debt component levy. And you can see that our total levy is increased from this, say, $7 million. Did you see where this is not a good color for this, to up to this almost 13 million in 2024 tax year. That gold, that yellow line that you see there is our tax rate over time. And you can see back from 2019 going backwards, from here backwards, for many years, we had a tax rate of 65.98. Then in 2020 and 2021, we lowered that to 63. We then declined several times, and then now we're recommended to be flat here for 2023 and 2024 at 53.26. That's what that looks like graphically. So that's property tax. I want to take you on then to sales tax revenue. Okay, so you've seen this chart before, I believe. So on a rolling 12-month basis, we were growing at a rate of 22 annually back in February of 22. That of growth has since fallen to where here in February of 2024, that rolling 12-month growth rate is now 2.8%. It's still growing. I mean, here's zero. This is the 0%. If it fell below zero, then we'd have declining growth, right? We'd be actually shrinking. But we're not. We're still growing. But this chart is intended to show you that our sales tax growth is actually slowing, and has considerably over the last 2 years.
But I mean, we're not at 22% for sure. But the revenue, though, that chart
Revenue is
that we
still
get monthly
increasing.
from you
That's correct.
is a nice upward moving.
That's
chart.
correct. Yeah, still growing, just not as quickly as it had been. Still growing, still going up.
The expectations for 22 or 15 are still out there, but I think,
Yeah.
well, average of that.
I'm putting 3 in the fiscal 25 now. Still a 3% growth rate, is where I'm landing.
Is that about our population growth rate, around 3%? City of Belton
Yeah,
population
maybe so.
growth around 3%. So generally speaking, unless you have a shift in buying habits, you should grow at about what your population is growing.
Plus inflation.
Yeah, that's good.
Plus
Yeah,
inflation,
it should be like 4.
which actually we've had deflation lately.
Almost, no.
Well, just. No, I mean, you look at the bids from asphalt, it
Yeah.
went from it went down. And so we've seen a lot of items have that have.
Yeah, that's true. So part of the then for that decline, you've probably also seen this before.
Yeah.
So what I do is I get our report from the comptroller's office and I put take our actual allocation. This is the confidential comptroller's report tells me who is paying me what. This is real numbers. And so what I do is I take that and I kind of break it into these kind of categories you see there. Construction, I call it construction related type category, retail, entertainment, gas, restaurants, and utilities. Those are the categories that I take our information and break it down in. And construction is about 33% of our total tax base, at least in mine. Retail is another 33% or so. The rest combined is that final third. Okay. And so now when I look on a rolling 12-month basis, you can see in a big jump here in 2021 or 2022 from 2021 on the construction related sales. But then it's declined since then. So I've gone from 2.27 million in 2022 to now through April of 2024 on a rolling 12 basis. I'm down $200,000 from that to just over 2 million. So the construction component, at least in April, now that may change a bit with everything going on, but the construction component of our sales tax base is declining a little bit. The retail group though is making up for that. So we're seeing, over that same time frame, a $200,000 increase from 2022 to 2024 in the retail category. So it's offsetting. That's why I'm growing. And then the rest of that is all added together is relatively flat. But that's an interesting way this is actually our sales tax makeup. So now then, if you just look at our sales tax revenue, as again you had said before, you can see that the numbers are actually growing throughout that whole time frame there, from 3.5 million in 2018 all the way to 6.6 million in 2025 is what I'm budgeting. I'm budgeting for now a 3% increase over our estimate for 2024. Other revenues in the general fund, our refuse collection fee are increasing by 10%. That's the 3-year average growth rate for our trash collection. That's basically drawing that. We've had several discussions about interest income. Again, to be conservative, I'm assuming that interest rates will drop from 5 to 4. That's a 20% drop from our current year estimate. Now, I know that's probably going to be conservative because if there's any interest rate drop, it'll probably won't be till mid-year, mid-year fiscal year, late 20, early to mid 2025, probably before we would ever get down to 4%.
And the projection is now for 2 rate cuts at a quarter each. So, I mean,
Yeah.
that's 4% low.
Yeah, I think it's going to be conservative. Yeah. Transfers, other significant revenues are transfers from the water and sewer fund. That's growing by $220,000. Most of that is franchise fees. The way franchise fees are calculated, the general fund charges the water and sewer fund a franchise fee just like it would any other utility. And that franchise fee is based upon the FY23 sale. And so because FY23 sales increased over 22, that's why this number goes up. Also, just a reminder, ARPA is now gone away as far as that money coming into the general fund. It goes from 263 in 24 to 0 in 2025. That's general fund revenues. Let's walk now into general fund expenditures. I always like to look at expenditures kind of from a higher level down to a little more granular level. And that's first by function. So public safety, this public safety function is 50% of our general fund expenditures. Not really surprising there. The general government function you see there at 14%. The general government function consists of city council, city administration, finance, HR, court. That all goes into the general government, more administrative type stuff. Culture and recreation is 11% of expenditures, followed by solid waste and streets. So let's look now at your expenditure budget by function. So these are those functions that I just talked about. In 2024, it was $23,502,000. In 2025, goes up by $656,000 to $24,208,000. That's a 2.7% increase in expenditures from one budget year to the next. The big driver, so you have a couple of things going on here. That 504 is the biggest number, 15% change there too. Part of that's several reasons, and we'll repeat them as we go along here. If you notice, this one went down 70,000. So we moved $100,000 from development services to the city council budget. This is the home grant program, the cash for the home grant program, home rehabilitation and stuff. So this one, so that's about 100,000 of that 504. We added an assistant city manager, which makes up some of that increase in general government. We also have a compensation study budgeted in 25, which makes some of that general government increase. We have a community survey that makes up some of that general government increase. Culture and recreation, that's library and parks, essentially. There is a parks superintendent in that one, as well as water charges for the first time in there. And then that solid waste that you see of 171 there, again, that's refuse collection. That's by function. It's easier to see if we look at it now by department. So police is 32%. Fire is 18% of our expenditures. Solid waste is 10%. You can see how that now. Well, let me walk you through these now. So now we're looking at it down from function. Now we're looking at down at the department level. And we have all of these departments, and there's more. So city council increases $120,000 from 2024 to 2025. That predominantly is that home grant that I was talking about, where we move the costs from a different division into city council. This administration, the primary driver there is the assistant city manager position. Finance took over grants coordinator position from administration. So that's what's driving that increase in finance. And in HR here, that's a comp study. $30,000 of that number is a comp study. Police goes down 166. That's due to capital expenditures that we made in fiscal 24 that we don't have to make now in 5. Body cameras is what that is. Moving on. Parks and Recreation, that increase that you see there is due to that parks superintendent position that we're adding, as well as the water charges that we're now charging. Solid waste is that other increase. So all in all, again, 656,000 in additional expenditures in 25 over 24. So let's still lower down even further into these and look at it by category. Personnel costs are 60% of the general fund's budget. That's on par with every other city around. Services make up 24%. So let's look at these. We're going to talk about these in a little more detail as we go. I just want to highlight some of them. So I said 656,000 is what the total change is from one budget to the next. Personnel costs and services both go up by those numbers, 720 and 342. And that increase of over $1 million is offset by a decrease in capital outlay and transfer. So let's talk about these. Personnel, you've heard me say already. In the general fund, it's about $312,000 for an assistant city manager and a park superintendent. That's all in, all included, everything, benefits, everything. Those are the only 2 positions we have planned for the general fund at this time. Remember, we increased substantially our personnel count in fiscal 24, so we're kind of holding the line now in 25. Health insurance is scary and unknown at this time. We have budgeted for now a 20% increase in health insurance costs, which is $200. We've heard from our consultant, we possibly could see something in the mid 30% range and higher. So that means we're going to be meeting with them next week, I believe, or so. And then we're going to start talking plan designs and things like that, trying to see what we can do before they go shop to bring it down to 20% to hopefully even more than that. Also in personnel costs, we have our annual merit and then civil service pay increases. That's about $310,000. That's the big driver in that increase from fiscal 24 to fiscal 25. On the supply side, these aren't quite as exciting. We purchased a lighting system and replaced blinds in Harris Center in 24. Don't need to do that now in 25. So that's a $30,000 decrease in Parks and Recreation. Same thing in police and fire when it comes to clothing. We hired new people, had to put uniforms on them. And I don't have to do that again in 25. So that falls by like 16,000. Grant expenses also declined by 17 in the supplies group. Looking at maintenance, street maintenance is going to go up by 3% was the number.
Oh, yeah.
And so now it's unchanged at 1,054,000. That would be more than that when we add the 3%, but we can certainly do that this meeting. Building the fire department goes down because we bought furniture and fixed the parking lot in 24. Though that decrease is offset by a $15,000 increase in sign maintenance for Welcome to Belton signage, part of the beautification committee recommendations. And then we're going to upgrade some facilities at Chisholm Trail Park for $6,000. Well, that's why their total cost goes 6. Services is the bigger increase in the fund besides personnel. Again, this is refuse trash collection. As we have more customers, we have more trash pickup customers, and that grows. Again, that's typically the average number. This is the new one. So in the general fund, we have $137,000 that we're adding to the general fund budget to pay for water that it uses primarily in parks. We talked about that as part of this water rate study. And as we're finalizing that, I'm assuming that we'll add that in fiscal 25. Again, it makes the Parks Department, one, you can fully capture the cost of running a park if I have a cost like that in there. And two, it's more, we're more accountable for that water consumption if they're having to pay for it. Contract mowing costs are going up. This is kind of wide area mowing throughout the city. That's going to go up by like 35,000 in fiscal 25. Takes me now to these other expenses. These are the contributions that city council makes to our various nonprofit. Those don't change over except with the addition of this Karst Coalition. They're $4,700.
Pass-throughs and not budgeted.
I'm sorry?
Some pass-throughs, or are they all pass-throughs? So the crossing guard, we don't write a check for that. Bell County writes a check to us.
Correct.
and we
Some of
can't-
that one is, yes.
So Bell County Public Health, we pay that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so there's some of these, I don't know which ones are truly budgeted versus pass-through.
Well, the revenue is one thing and the expense is the other thing. So
Yeah,
we're separated from budgeting.
Yeah, but if it's a pass-through, I wouldn't count it as an expense.
I'll have to. That's what I'm saying. It's two different things.
Yeah.
It's not a net cost. It's not a taxpayer cost, if you will. I agree with you.
Yeah.
That Karst Coalition is that study that's going on about ants or creatures, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
47. On the capital side, we'd like to put lights on the Chisholm Trail ball courts. That's $23,000. We also have $28,000 for tank trailer for streets. I don't know if that's a hot tank trailer or a hot tank trailer. But that's what they said they needed. And then on the transfers, that's going to go down by $183,000 for the equipment replacement transfers. A couple of things are happening here. One, we had some equipment that we accelerated. I think most of it is kind of street sweeper maybe, where we accelerated the equipment and we were really having to ramp up our expenses. Well, that's now done and we're good there. But for the sake of keeping us within budgeted revenues, we're going to only contribute 100% our annual contribution rate as opposed to 125. You'll remember probably a couple of years the plan was when we revisited the equipment replacement fund and we were short of funding, we were going to go 75% of the annual contribution and then 100% in 24 and 125% in 2025. Because of we're going to, for now, we have just 100% again in 2025. Doesn't affect us too much. The savings is about $70,000, I believe, some number like that. And I don't think it's going to strain our equipment replacement funds much if we just leave it at 100%. So that's kind of the plan as it sits now.
So while you're, I've not, and it may be in one of the pages that I haven't looked at. We have a lot of funds now. Used to general fund, we would basically kind of handle lots of we would draw down a general fund when we had to buy a big thing. Now we've put different funds together to pay for servers or fire trucks or street sweepers.
Correct.
Do you have that balance?
I can certainly get it for you.
That would be good to have.
Yeah.
Because when we look at our reserves, it increases the need to have those reserves because we now have all this other funding for those big capital outlays. And so the reserves are truly emergency reserves, not operational reserves.
Yeah, that's good.
And so if we can add those together, it'll show us what the total reserves, operational as well as emergency reserves.
Right.
Because if we want to draw down or, shift funding, and if we don't have visibility of that, it's
correct. Got it. I can certainly provide that. At the end, you probably won't remember, we mentioned that a bit, I believe, when we presented the fiscal 23 year-end results. Those funds are not currently budgeted funds, all of the equipment replacement funds, which is why nobody sees them. We talked about years ago, maybe making those budgeted funds. We could do that and then everything would be apparent, but.
I would encourage us personally to do that, because as an example, one of the reasons we were going to start trying to catch up was because we're going to have to buy this ladder truck. And so there's this impetus to save money for something that we're planning on budgeting, but it's not in a budget. It's just in an idea. And so we start, and same thing for water, sewer with some of the large expenditures. We were pulling more money and saving money for those future expenditures. So it'd be good to have kind of that,
It seems like we have an awful lot of reserve that's not in the general.
Outside of the general fund is.
And then that was one of my questions.
Yes,
later.
I think that's a true statement.
If our general fund now is pushing, the requirement, the requirement's 25%, we're pushing 37.8 excess in our general fund. Ideally, where would you like that to be? And then maybe that would be a good question for the council as well, considering
we have
we've got a technology fund, equipment fund, we've got, a lot of stuff that's outside of the general fund. Maybe that number should come down a little bit. And spend a little general fund.
Yeah, no, I'm completely agreeing with you. I'll provide you with some of that information. I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head.
It's the first meeting, so it's
yeah, no, that's okay. But yes, all of that kind of happens outside of that. Back to reserves. Back to reserves. Okay. We have a lot of reserves. We have, but what I wanted to kind of do, so what we do is create kind of a long-term forecast, but I'll tell you, I don't spend a whole lot of time on this forecast. I really want to show you this based upon more so than precise numbers. For the next 5 years, if we put in some revenue assumptions like these, and we put in some expenditure assumptions like these, and these aren't just completely made up numbers, it's generally in line with what we see in annual type increases. Then a couple of things happen when you do that. So the red bar that you see here, this is the actual reserve balance. That'd be not a good color to put above that. It's better when I do that though. This red line that you see there is the actual reserve dollar amount. And you can see that over this 5-year time frame here, that it really stays right around that $9.5 million. It's relatively flat actual reserves with these scenarios for the next 5 years. The bars that you see, vertical bars that you see here, that is our minimum fund balance requirement based upon our policy. So what our policy says is that, it's purposefully written this way, but it says we'll try to maintain at least 30% reserves, but at no point will it fall below 25%. That keeps us, remember, you may recall when we were upgraded by the credit rating agencies, the number one thing they said over and over again throughout that was very strong reserves. They loved that. So that's why I'm using 30 for this exercise. So even though the red bar there is relatively flat, the actual dollar amount of our reserves doesn't change just a whole lot over this time frame. Our reserve requirement increases substantially from around $7 million in 2025 to closer to $9 million in 2029. And that's a function of increasing expenditures over time. Okay, so even though the numbers are closer to our reserve requirement, our minimum reserve requirement in these out years, with these trends here. Again, I'm not trying to predict that it's always going to be these numbers. It's just kind of for trending purposes. So, and that gets back into that discussion that we're having now about how much we have in reserves. Well, things are looking really good here for 2025, but we can't close our eyes to the future growth of reserve requirements as we go.
In order to balance that, though, we need to look at how good we've done in predicting our reserves versus actual fund balance over the last 4 years, not just looking for the next 4 years. Because we were planning on drawing down 200 plus.
Correct.
And we ended up adding 400. So we were $600,000 better on prediction. So if we looked at that over the last 4 years, my guess is that red line is not going to be flat down. It's going to continue because we typically have missed the other way. To the tune of north of $1 million a year, I think, over the last 3 years.
And that's a great point, David. I think our budget, we are
Super
very
conservative.
conservative, super conservative. Our interest rate's 4%, and just very, very conservative. And we don't like to dip into fund balance for general fund expense. So that's a hurdle for the council. And so I think that looking forward, it's a little skewed.
Yeah.
Again,
this isn't intended to.
Yep.
Everything. The general trend is our reserve balance is going to increase and we need to keep up. Where I really need you to go now, is here.
My quick question, that ordinance is based on 30%, not 25%?
Yes.
Okay.
Get back on.
And there's no personnel in that. There's no additional people. There's none of that capital, anything like
That's
that.
as is.
To piggyback on earlier, that red line would not include all the money that's in the other balances.
Correct.
That's already pulled out. So
Yeah.
if you included those in this, that line would probably.
Yeah, you're entirely mixing up at that point. So you couldn't really do that for this.
I know you're mixing it up, but we're pulling it out of general fund
What
to
you
do
could,
it.
yeah, what you could do is say, does our balance need to be 30% if I have that other money out there? That's really the question.
Yeah. And I literally wrote down what David wrote too. I would love to see this graph with also 5 years back, because I've almost been here 5 years and I know we've had the same stance over the last 5 years and we've done a really good job, but I would like to see actual versus and just kind of see where that chart goes.
Okay. We just really started spending some time with this over the last couple of years.
This is a good one.
But yes, I can do that. The biggest picture is this, as far as long-term forecast goes. Okay, so what GIS did here was overlay the additional right-of-way over our existing land and who might that affect if that came to be. And those highlighted that you see there, we have a lot of our top taxpayers on this chart. When I do the math, and I did not include everything by a long shot, every parcel of land. This is over $1 million just at what you look at right there.
$1 million annual
In tax.
sales tax.
Property sales,
Property and sales.
hotel,
Gotcha.
that whole thing. So again, yeah, I know that number is probably wrong. But let's not, this is the biggest thing in our long-term forecast and it's not in there at all. So this is going to be significant to say the least. I'd love to say this is a project scheduled for 2050, but it's not. This thing has legs and it's constantly at us. So we need to keep an eye on that as we discuss things like reserve. And not saying that I'm not disagreeing with you, but as we have those reserves discussions, as we have these tax rate discussions for property taxes and things, let's not forget that this is a big ugly gorilla and it's 2 or 3 years out. So.
It is a big ugly gorilla or elephant and it's one bite at a time, but let's just say $1 million and it takes 4 years to recover the $1 million. Then we would need $4 million in reserve and then we can compare it to where we are.
Absolutely.
So I think that those are some things that are probably good to add to the long-term forecast for at least this county, Temple as well. But they're probably not as impacted as a percentage like we are.
Yeah.
So, we will be significantly disrupted.
And how much?
2 million?
2 million,
2.2.
2.2.
2.2?
Currently, we have set aside 562,000.
What year are we buying that fire truck?
Just a little ways to go.
Okay. That's the general fund for 2025. First pass anyway. That's what I'm probably going to bring back to you when we're going to make some changes based upon street maintenance. We'll make some of those changes to bring back a proposed budget. We'll definitely work on some of that forecasting.
Speaking of street maintenance, and I don't know how much analysis you guys get, but you do, and when we do our financial audit every year, we list assets and we list streets as one of those assets. Are we tracking the percentage increase in miles of our streets every year? It would probably good to peg our street budget based on the number of miles increase along with some kind of whatever. So that way we're always contributing based on the asset we have, not just based on what we're spending.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be typically some shifts as we see a lot of development and then no development.
Yeah.
So it would be good to kind of lead that target a little bit.
Well, and the same with developer conditions of streets. Nice new streets are great, but 30 now we got to fix them all.
Yeah.
Or replace them all probably is a better idea. So yes, I that's true.
That'll be Wayne's problem. He'll be the only one left on council then.
Don't let them. Okay, let's move along to debt service fund. But as everybody's aware, part of our property taxes property tax rate goes to debt service. And so, so we expect to end this year with like about $83,000 worth of reserves in that fund. That's what's building that is the interest income over time. Revenue and expenses about equal, a slight increase again to reserves. I may have 132 at the end of 25. The other option that we have, I don't want to tank this to zero because just like you'll see shortly, we don't always collect 100% of what we budget in property taxes. But we could certainly draw down use some of this money to lower our debt rate. I mean, it wouldn't be a whole lot. If we use 50,000, it's still within the third or fourth digit probably, but we can do that if you want to do that.
This one gets me when it's over 100.
Now, I think honestly, for most of it, if we can get that close to zero as possible, and what we've done is we've bought down the rate and just transferred some general fund money into the debt service fund to buy that rate down.
Right. But essentially that's the same game.
It's the same game. But what you're doing is now you're managing it within your reserve instead of having another reserve on top of the reserve.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this doesn't have to be this high, if you will. I remember we took it to near zero, down to about 10,000 or so like that in a budget a couple of years ago. And we ended up having to transfer even more from the general fund at the end of the year to cover a negative reserve at the end of the year.
I think that year we also had an increase in general fund more than we anticipated. So that budget transfer was covered by other anticipated.
So
Expected increase.
So then what I can do is, well, now's a good time to tell me because the VailCAD's going to be asking me very soon.
Debt service fund is at 10% of our debt service fund excessive for a balance, I think, personally.
So if 50,000,
please.
So
I can
keep it down level year. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I can do that. So what'll happen is in the proposed budget that I'm bringing back to you, that revenue number would be $50,000 less. And I'll draw that down. So. Okay. So here again, this is property taxes make up all of this net income. Slight gain there in revenues. On the expenditures are essentially flat. A $1,500 increase over 1 year to the next. Principal and interest are fairly flat. These are the bond obligations that we have currently outstanding. $7.6 million in bonds right now outstanding. These are tax supported bonds on a debt schedule or debt payment kind of graph. You can see that our, here, let me do it this way. So for the next, we're going to maintain that $1.2 million. As these things start to mature, some of these out years, we'll have a slight drop here in 29, 2030. Then we'll have a significant fall 2031, significant fall again in 2030 as these things mature.
I just have to say on that graph, I love that graph. It has a lot of capacity. Speaking of conservative, we've got a lot of capacity to borrow if we need to. I think Brandon was the one kind of started us on thinking about was it something zero?
Pay as you go.
Oh, pay go. That's what it was. Yeah, pay as you go. Being able to use TERS funds for some of the big projects and stuff like that leaves the general fund for the occasion that 35 changes and we've got to change the way we finance. So
And the most exciting part of that graph is it's a little hard to read, but the interest expense portion of that graph.
Correct.
Really small.
That's this low part right down here.
Does this include the water purchase?
No,
No,
that's in the water fund.
No, this is just one.
Different color.
Yeah, different.
Different colored money. So yes, we have some capacity right here if you want to. So here we are. So what we talked about tonight was a 7% increase in maintaining a flat tax rate at 5326 for property tax revenue in the general fund. Sales tax again is slowing, but not going negative yet. In the general fund, we put two new positions in there. In fact, it's kind of 1.5. The ACM we've already done, but because it wasn't in fiscal 24 and I haven't amended for that, it looks like an addition in 25. We have our typical increases for employees, up to a 5% merit based upon performance and a 2% increase for civil service employees. Those are their step plans. That contracted street maintenance is now going to be more than $1 million, was what we bring back to you. And that's a good call. We can do that. Debt service is stable at 1.2 million. So what do we have left? And it's going to be a lot. Bear with me, council, as we go through these discussions. But at our next meeting on June the 11th, we're going to talk our special revenue funds, hotel TERS, our internal service funds, IT and building maintenance, and then BDC. I plan to follow that on the 25th with a discussion about the water budgets for water, sewer, and drainage, as well as our capital improvements program. Also on that day, at an early meeting, we'll talk about water rate design again on June 25. On July 9th is when I'll actually bring back to you a proposed budget as well as a proposed strategic plan. But note, if we don't get our certified rolls until July 25, then at that time, so the proposed budgets that you're going to see will still be based upon these preliminary figures that I have from Bellcat, that certified estimate. Then we get our certified roll to July 25. On August the 6th is when we'll ask council to propose a tax rate. And then depending upon what tax rate that you propose, we'll either adopt the budget and tax rate on August the 19th, or we'll do so on September the 10th. The reason that does, if remember I'd mentioned those rates, no new revenue, voter approval, and de minimis. If you go over de minimis, if you're proposing a rate that goes over de minimis, that would require an election. And if we are going to call an election, we have that on August the 19th. which means we would have to adopt the rate and the budget on that night. If not, if we're not going to go have an election, we have until September to finish this process. Any other questions or comments for me for general fund and debt service funds?
Appreciate all the big pie graphs where I can see them pretty well. And it's nice to have Bob back to keep you on track with all those other things.
He does.
This is a real small thing, but we've been so fortunate and worked so hard on getting grants in the past. It's really been beneficial. And you talked about cutting the grantors.
So that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to reduce our grant pursuance. By no means of that. Joelle is doing an amazing job at finding his grants. The reason that's lower is basically because of the ones that we know that we are going to have. It's less of a city match to those. We had some larger ones that we're not going to have unless we get those grants. That's the only reason that went down. That's not an end of any less motivation to get as many grants as we can.
Thank you. Because I think she's done a fantastic job in working with staff to get those grants. So go forth and get more.
Mike, just a request. Can we, when we're doing historical graphs, can we look at maybe a 3-year average, a 5-year average, or some of these are 2-year, and then we look at a 5-year sales tax history and some of those.
Yeah.
Can we maybe develop a standard that we look at and review, and then, we just trust your analysis and say, oh, wait, there was a goofy year in here, or Fed changed rates, whatever it may be, but we're jumping all over the board in terms of historical data that we see.
Sure. Understood. It's a good recommendation.
We've had some strange occurrences that we hope do not repeat themselves too, in terms of the COVID, the boom with the sales tax and the ARPA funds, and some things that, we pray that we don't go through those again at any time soon. So that's going to skew any kind of historic.
See those spikes, but, and that's where the financial expertise comes in.
All right, guys, and gal, any other comments right now? We don't want to wait till August 19th to start having a tax rate or budget discussion. So if you guys have any comments, now's a good time to do it. If you think that having a flat ad valorem tax, if we should go up, we should go down, if we should look at different balances, now's a good time to give Mike if you sleep on it and say, I really should have said something, call him. Yep. But right now, does anyone have any comments about any of those types of things?
Mine's just gonna be, I know we hate dipping into the reserves and using the fund balance, but for me, if you budget where you're taking care of the hypercritical, you're doing what you need to do, I'd like to see that compared to a no new revenue rate and how much of the fund balance that would eat, especially as we continue to climb in fund balance. We get told every year that we're going to have to use some fund balance. We're going to have to do some fund balance. It's going to be tighter this year, but every year we seem to find a way to make it work and we come out ahead. And I kind of at the point where I'd like to challenge ourselves a little bit on, if it shows 150,000 or 200,000 of eating fund balance or whatever the number may be, and if we can get to zero at the end of the year because we've made up a little bit, I'd say let's go there. I don't want to cut out what you guys need. Or what's hypercritical, but if we can see that compared to a no new revenue rate, and compared to where that would be, hey, fund balance was here last year, we're going to eat that much, we're going to be where we're at the year before. I'd like to see that. Not necessarily saying that's the rate I would vote for, but I think it would be a good number to see. The Parks and Rec and Public Works Hill I'll die on is I remember when the previous council before me was being sold Heritage Park, there was a pump and 167,000 gallons a day. Now that we're going to start charging ourselves water, what does that look like if we pulled the trigger, and what's the worst of the lines crossed, as they would say, on what we'd spend on our own water versus what we can pump out for ourselves.
And are we putting the amount of water that we can't account for?
There is an unaccounted for, yes. That's part of the utility fund annual report they have to do to the state, loss and unaccounted for.
It'd
And
be
so,
interesting
yes,
to see that back over time. Is it flat or is it increasing or decreasing? And how did
You know
it
that?
change with the meters? Or did it? Or was that irrelevant?
I definitely think it got better with the meters, with the AMI infrastructure.
Right.
But it's still probably a bigger number than you may realize, just in terms of, think about pipe breaks, hydrant flushing, that 80 fires to that example. We just kept bypassing that water through. It's 9%. Well, it went up this year. We're blowing up a little bit. We can definitely get you those numbers. Sure.
Yeah, my last point was gonna be if we told ourselves we were only gonna do 75% before and then 100 and then 125, what does it take to stick to it?
Okay.
Because I'd hate to get behind a curve on something else down the road. That's my personal opinion, so.
The number, like $67,000 from 100 to 125 in the general fund. There's obviously some effects in the other funds as well. If you want us to, if you would prefer me to bring that back, with making the other changes, I mean, I've got added additional street maintenance costs. That's 30,000, so that's 100 grand extra in expenses.
And a decrease.
You know, then if I'm doing no new revenue, that's gonna be some less revenue. But yes, appreciate that, Mayor, because yes, the more information, I mean, even if you don't want to make a decision, just give me your thoughts. The earlier we can do this, the more talk about it as we go through the process and not get to the end and say surprise.
Yeah, I always have that tension at the end of, and I'm glad David said it now, but yeah, we always seem to find our way out of that hole, and it's really, let's challenge ourselves this year.
Just a couple thoughts from me. I'm a new guy here, and so I don't have the depth of knowledge or history that everybody else has, but to me, it seems like the no new revenue rate and the current tax rate are really close this year. It was not always the case. So I think pushing to the no new revenue rate as a maximum is attainable. I'd like to see what that would look like. And then a lot of the discussion on reducing the reserve balance. I think it would be helpful for me to see when we start talking about how to do that. I know a lot of the costs that we have, personnel costs for example, is ongoing, and it's not something that we can't just take $2 million and say, well, we're going to pay personnel with that balance this year, because next year that we're going to need the $2 million to pay it again. So I'd like to see where some one-time expenses are just for this year that we could spend out of the reserves, and kind of help me to understand where that breakdown is. That makes sense?
Yeah, non-recurring, yeah.
Last year, we identified some significant needs in personnel and we're able to meet those. Do we have some of those kinds of things hanging out there? It may not be people this time. It's something. Where are there significant needs that we should consider as we're looking at all of this?
4 more brush trucks.
Maybe.
So yeah, I mean, we purposefully wanted to limit any personnel additions in 25. That recurring nature, and because we added 14 to 24, I'm not comfortable bringing you another budget adding a lot of FTEs. I'm just not comfortable with that. So we try to be a little bit lean there. When we meet with departments, we ask them to bring a budget. What I'll tell them to do is be close to the 4-year average of your expenditures. That's my number. And then they always go over. That's okay. But we have a discussion about those things. And I think where departments needed some items, we put those in there. Relatively inexpensive. I'm going to add on to this, James. But in parks, you saw I said we're doing lighting at Chisholm Trail, pickleball courts, whatever. $25,000, great enhancement for the community. Let's do it. Cost was relatively low. They had many, many more items that they would on their wish list that they would like to do. But for the sake of knowing where revenues were going to be, we kind of said, let's talk about this later and then we'll see where it goes. So, there is a list like that, but most of that is in parks and most of that was very expensive things.
Well, do some of them have ROI, like getting the equipment we need to begin to suck water out of the Leon that
Yeah.
we pay for and water with that rather than using city water.
Yeah. Nobody said that one, but yes, that's a good example.
And you're exactly right. We brought you 45 employees as a recommendation at the strategic plan session last year. We were able to add 14, 15 basically. And so clearly there are other needs in the future, but that was a 5-year plan. That was not something that we had to do immediately. And we, talked to the staff about, we were very generous last year and we need to really be cognizant of that as we go forward. And so we believe the budget and the personnel that is presented is adequate for this year. Not to say those needs don't go away. And as community grows and the demand service needs change, those needs will be there in the future, but we don't are essential this year.
Thank you.
I would just, from some of the conversations I've had this last week with the events, I think there may be some items that will arise that we maybe didn't know we might need, like the floor brush, tongue in cheek there, but conversations with maybe some IT things that would make us better prepared for another event. I know I'll probably have not had the time to truly assess what that looked like. I think that might be something to add to the consideration.
Adequate generator for city.
One coming. That
Just
was
some
ordered.
things like that.
It's ordered. It's coming. That was already
That
ordered.
to me would be pretty pressing because we don't want to get caught without an event like that again. I'm not real sure that those events are going to end either. Seems like they're every week right now. So I would just consider that as we think about reserve and one-time type figures, because you don't want anything that you would have to continue to sustain when the funding's not going to be sustained.
I'm really concerned about I-35 impact, healthcare cost, political uncertainties. Won't even get into that. And you mentioned, David mentioned earlier, deflation in some areas, but we also have inflation in other areas. The idea of no new revenue at all, considering the situation that we're in, concerns me. We're gonna pay down the fund balance a little bit. To me, it's a one or the other. It's not a both, but that's my opinion at this point in time.
I would add to that with Wayne, I think just from years, although I'm new here, I've sat out there for a long time and listened over and over about the precedent of the no new versus flat versus this and what that might set you up for in the future. I don't know that answer, but I know that that's one thing you look at and consider before you actually make that decision about the no new revenue.
It's a whole lot easier to stay where you are than to come back in next year or the year after and ask for a major tax increase to pay for
And I know.
whatever it is, based on the I-35 and some of those other issues I mentioned. And if we get stuck with a 30% increase in healthcare cost.
That's a big unknown. Because
what does that mean in dollars? So when you say 30% versus a 20%,
So it's 200,000 at 20%.
It's 200. So it's another 100,000.
Another 100.
Okay, an additional 100,000.
We're gonna have to get creative on our plans and plan design. We can do it, I think, but I don't. Our claims ratio right now is upside down and has for some time. And probably going down anytime soon. So we're gonna have to be creative in our plan design, rates that we charge employees, that sort of thing, to try to push that number down. If it's because they literally are right now, they haven't bid anything. But based upon our loss ratio, we should be closer to 35 to 40% than 20. So I think we're gonna have to work to get to that 20%. I think we can do it. But it may not be pretty.
And you think we'll have those numbers soon?
So what happens is we'll meet with our rate consultant. I think it's in June, first week of June. They then will sit with us, say, this is your loss ratio. This is what it's looking like. Then we'll start talking plan designs. And then once we're comfortable with what that is. Then they do an RFQ, RFP, whatever. They'll go shop. That we won't know the number until October or something like that, the real number. That's just the timing of it all. The timing is not good, but that's generally, it'll be like August, maybe August, but I think it's August, September. Yeah, it's late in the process. Yeah, I think it is before we adopt, but it's very late in the process. But the number will be what even if we don't change the budget, the number is going to be what the number is going to be.
Mike, I think we do a great job on developing a very, very conservative budget that usually underestimates a revenue, and our are usually in the numbers. So I think that's a surprise. The thing I'm concerned about is that we have established replacement fund, equipment replacement funds, technology fund, maintenance fund, and pulled that out of our general fund. And now our general fund's 37% of the requirement, and that we may be, in some instances, sometimes maybe collecting a little too much tax from the taxpayer. And we come back with a pretty big excess amount of revenue from the rise on the revenue side.
Yeah.
So,
well, and to be clear on that, what we do budget is that annual contribution. So we have a schedule of every single asset and what the expected future replacement of that, what the cost is going to be, and when we think it's going to occur. And then we break that, divide that by all the years, and then that's what we're doing these annual contributions for. If you looked at it on the surface, if you just say, let's just look at where we are in the equipment replacement fund today, we're going to be well underfunded, even though there's a massive amount of cash. That's $2 million. There may be $2 million of cash today sitting in those equipment replacement funds. If you were to add up all the assets that need to be replaced, you're not going to have enough money. That's why we've been trying to catch us up. So what we're doing is you are paying for it. It's pay-go. It's pure and simple. Is you're paying for it as you go every year's annual contributions, building it up this $2 million to go take fire, for instance. You're going to build up a larger balance and then spend $2 million on a ladder truck in 2029.
but that's far and above most municipalities. Most municipalities aren't planning for those items that far out. I don't think.
Yeah, it's a best practice of GFO to do this. I've done it for years. Everybody should be doing it if they're not. I mean, I'll just tell you that because it's a good thing and we should continue to do. But yes, you're correct. All of these, I can tell you, since I've been here in my 5 years, I've eliminated many money, and everybody on my staff can tell you that. Trying to make things more transparent for you guys because I don't like buckets of money. And yes, we're managing that behind the scenes. It's not budgeted. You don't really see it until you get to the end of the year with annual financial report. But yes, some of it's pretty big.
A couple of things for me that jump out. I think number one is we had planned for 200,000 or so deficit this year. We're coming in 400,000 above. So we'll actually start the year 600,000 to the better than what we thought we would do. So just in my simple thinking is we could probably say, well, we'll do a $600,000 deficit next year. We'll just use that, the last year's plan, just be even. And my guess is if we plan for $600,000 deficit, we may come in at $200,000 deficit or break even, right? So we typically are conservative. So I think in that range is probably a fair, like as far as a margin, like, hey, if we have 30% for healthcare and if we pay for this extra in spending and if we stick with the no new revenue rate, I think we probably in that range is probably safe. I agree on both sides. I think no new revenue is so close that just the principle of it is probably not a bad thing, but I don't think there's an appetite at this point that I've heard that we want to go below that like we've done in the past. So I think that, holding on our own to no new revenue are probably reasonable rates from my perspective.
Right. So think of then it's just discussion. Yeah. That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
Not, you're 100% correct, Mayor, on we coming in 600,000 better in 24. Let's use some of that. Basically, keeping the math simple, use that 600, draw down reserves in 25 for that 600. And logic does make sense. And mathematically would be about what we thought we were going to be.
Yeah.
Correct. I agree.
Yeah.
That on these pages would mean essentially either finding another $600,000 to spend it on. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like increasing if there's $600,000 more of cost that we think that we need, those one-time items especially would be great for that. From increasing expenditures to use $600,000 worth of reserves, I would be reducing revenue by 600,000. And that would then put pressure. You would be considerably below no new revenue rate if we did 600,000.
Yep.
I'm not
Yep.
arguing against
Yep.
anything. I'm just, that's really the only slot where that would come into play. If you wanted it to be that. So where I'm going with that is, I understand what you're saying, and I can certainly we'll bring back a use of reserve, drawing down some of that.
Well,
It
I
may
mean,
not be
is that
600.
number? So if we were to say, okay, if we go to no new revenue based on
Yeah.
this, it's a $200,000 difference in
Yeah.
revenue. Well, that's 200 of the 600.
That's right.
If you're going to do the 30% instead of 20% for healthcare, that's 100, right?
Yeah.
There's the other one that we did was another 80 something thousand dollars, right? Or 60. I mean, when you add all that, I'm just saying that when we add those that we talked about, and then if we go in and say, okay, what does it cost to draw out of the Nolan or out of Leon River, or if we want to get a pavilion in one of the parks
Yeah.
for something was on the list, we could look at some of those, I think, in that range. And also the increase in the street maintenance, right? So I think it
Yeah.
won't be hard,
No,
just based
probably
on
not.
what I heard,
Yeah.
to hit that 600.
Right.
And now I say that on one side, here I'm going to speak out of both sides of the mouth since we're just discussing. We're putting ourselves as significantly lower than our neighbors in our ad valorem tax rate based on their trends over the last several years. And based on the current events, especially with one of our neighbors, they're not going to be putting pressure to go down on the rate. If anything, it's going to be flat or up.
Right.
Because of the significant infrastructure challenges that they have. So I think that's the other thing we have to look at is we don't want to be so out of whack from our neighbors, but at the same time, that's a great economic development,
Mhm.
right? So I think it would be good as you come forward is show us what the neighbors are. So that way, when we look at our rate, we're not looking at just in a vacuum. Because that may put pressure on us to say, well, maybe we need to hold flat, move up.
So, and just a thought, if you don't mind, Sam. So, because we had talked about this. Okay, so here's that calendar. Get your thoughts real quick on this too. So you see on this list that I don't bring this back to you until July the 9th. Come on, thing. Whoops, we're going the wrong way. Until July the 9th. That's when we do the proposed budget. But we've talked tonight about several items that we might want to have some discussion ahead of that. So when would you guys, so we could have, the discussion Sam and I had was maybe having a workshop, a 5 p.m. type workshop sometime before July 9 or sometime in June with bringing back another option for a potential proposed budget for July 9. Here's the difference. If we talk about it and get some decisions, say I bring back use of reserves and you don't like it. I'd rather if we can do that in June, then the proposed budget that I bring back to you in July will more reflect your desires. If we wait, if we do nothing, have no discussions before then, I will work in something and bring it back on the 9th. And then we'll talk about some of these things all over again. It just shortens our time frame. And I'm not opposed to doing it that way. I'm just
with a few at a time.
Well, that's so I think there's three options. I think either we can add a workshop to one of these meetings, which may put a challenge on some of us. We might could have a special called workshop like in between, like between the 11th and the 25th. Or we might could break it into some work sessions where we can just work with everyone's schedule and schedule like 2 or 3 at a time.
Okay.
And just get that good.
Yeah.
Because I think we've all heard our voice. I don't think I think
No problem.
general consensus on a lot of these.
And with your direction, please feel free to call or
Yeah.
throw me any ideas. I appreciate that because that I want this to reflect what your needs and your desires.
One other thought that I've had throughout the weekend thinking about all this is, Mike, I already know you're gonna say that you're comparing apples and oranges, but we know that citizens are gonna be paying more for water. We know that's coming, and we don't know what it's gonna look like, but that's coming. And so I think that this is an opportunity with the strength of our budget and our funds that we have to do what we can to, if we're going up on them in one area, just from the taxpayer and water user standpoint, to be able to not hit them going and coming, you know what I mean?
Yep. Understood.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And thank you guys and gal for your comments. With that, our regular council meeting is adjourned. We will be convening executive session.
Going.
To see angry.
Go get snack.
So,
Sandwiches.
yep, so it's not gonna be long. It depends on how long. Anyway, so and I'm just gonna go ahead and read this into the record. We will be convening an executive session pursuant to the provision of the Open Meetings Law, Chapter 551, Government Code, Vernon, Texas codes annotated in accordance with the authority contained in Section 551.074 for personnel matters. We will take a 4-minute break. It's about boards commissions.
Can we turn the temperature?
I'll take care of your back, sir.
It's freezing to death.
I was helping my neighbor move some plants. Be careful out there. Good to see you at lunch.
Mike, it's nice. 2 steps forward, 3 steps back.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Sorry. We all leaving?
Fine, and once I get into motion, then I feel good. And then when I sit down, it hurts.
It's because we're under. For the first time, I connected to fully into that public works. We were around the year.
That's the other side of it.
We missed a bunch of meetings.
Where we were. That's pretty good. That's good.
I would say 18 group.